What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. I want to kick off today's show by talking about a guy who's been popular in my show since I began back in May, and he could actually be a big-time Bulls trade chip as we move into this next season, and that's Kevin Huerter. When you look at this Bulls roster as a whole, there are only players with contracts beyond 2026 currently are Modest Buzelis, Isaac Okoro, Noah Senge, and Pat Williams. And then Jalen Smith rounds out that list as well. It'll be interesting to see what his role is on this team moving forward. Modest, obviously, I've talked about a bunch, is going to be the focal point of this organization moving forward, given his age and the assets they, are looking to acquire to kind of play around Modest Buzelis and kind of complement his game. So this gives them a lot of trade assets in the form of expiring contracts and these other players. And one of those that could be shipped out by the trade deadline is Kevin Huerter. Huerter's refound shooting stroke makes him a compelling trade chip in my eyes here. He can still be an extremely valuable weapon for an offense lacking in an who doesn't have much of an outside shooting edge, especially one with the great defensive makeup to kind of, make up Huerter's so-so defensive ability. So when you look at a team who is stronger on defense, looking to add that shooting punch, I think Kevin Huerter, given his performance this past season to close it out following that Levine trade, if he has a strong start to this next season before the deadline, there are going to be teams calling on Kevin Huerter. I can guarantee you that. When you look at these young teams with an abundance of defensive talent, such as the Houston Rockets and the Orlando Magic, the two teams I gave out to you guys for NBA championship futures there, I think that the Rockets have a great shot to win it all, along with the Magic. They could be interested in Huerter's expiring contract. I would not be surprised if both of those teams come calling around February there to add a guy like Kevin Huerter. As the Bulls are currently set up and even going into the future, they have a ton of offensive talent. I think there's a lot of punch when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, but they kind of lack the defenders to truly be a complete team. And that's where you see a guy like Noah Senge getting drafted early in the first round by Chicago at such a young age to kind of hopefully bolster their defensive game for years to come here. They also made that move in Isaac Okoro, and I know I've pushed that, Lonzo Ball deal in terms of one that brings back some defensive acumen in Isaac Okoro, but they still have a ways to go before they establish a defensive identity. They're not there yet. They don't have the pieces in order to look at this organization as a whole and say, you guys are a defensive first team. And that's why, Kevin Huerter, looking at him as a whole as a player, this is a guy I was very optimistic about, still am moving into this next season. He does fit well with the Bulls' three-point heavy offensive ecosystem, but he is kind of an unnecessary luxury for the team right now at $18 million per season. As much as I would like to have him be a part of the future, I think what you can receive in terms of a deal sending Kevin Huerter elsewhere to a contender around this year's upcoming deadline, I think is something that you can't pass up if you're Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley. And some things to think about there as we move through the portion of where training camp's about to get underway. We're still a long ways away from February, but keep an eye on Kevin Huerter. If he has a strong start to this next season, that could be a guy that contending teams are calling upon to see if they can make him a solid add for their roster. So kind of switching gears, and I wanted to continue the conversation of some guys the Bulls could target during this upcoming season. Now, if you're going to deal Huerter away, what kind of guys could you be targeting as we move into the portion of the schedule in February where trade pieces are being talked about? There are three names that I've keyed on. Two of them are guys that I've talked about a ton since this show began. One of them is a new name, the first being none other than Jonathan Kuminga. Now, we'll have to continue to monitor that contract situation. If he signs that qualifying offer and becomes a unrestricted free agent next summer, we'll see if the Bulls go calling. Just got to kind of keep an eye on a guy like that. I think he is such an immensely great fit for the Chicago Bulls organization. And the Bulls have really been linked to him over the past few seasons. And with him and the Golden State Warriors continuing to disagree on a new contract, Chicago could swoop in and make a deal for him. I would not be surprised. We'll have to see what happens there. For the Bulls, they had a similar situation with Josh Giddey this summer, obviously, that they were able to resolve recently. And now they could go after Kuminga to add another key young player to their roster to help with their rebuild. We'll see how it shakes there. I think the young forward is a solid scorer and defender. He could fit real well in Chicago's rotation after falling out of Steve Kerr's rotation in Golden State last season. You guys know I am so on the side of this Jonathan Kuminga guy. I think he has the ability to really bolster this Chicago Bulls organization into a team looking to get to the next level. The second guy on this list of the three I wanted to profile, Anthony Simons. Now, if you guys remember back in the early part of this show, before or right around when he got dealt to Boston, I was very optimistic that the Celtics are going to try and move him. I still think that's the case. When you look at his case for being a Chicago Bull, the Bulls are in need of another elite scorer in their starting lineup. They could elect to target Anthony Simons to pair alongside Kobe White in the backcourt. Anthony Simons, of course, was traded to Boston earlier this offseason in the trade that sent Drew Holiday to Portland, though Boston has been looking to move him since, and I think it's still on the table for him to find another home outside of Boston there. Chicago could look to add, or to make a move for the young guard, to add another scoring guard to their offense, and I think he would look very solid alongside guys like Kobe White and Josh Giddey. Now, that's one that's probably going to catch some heat from Bulls fans. Why would we look to go add another scorer? There's some trade chips on this Bulls team that are currently scorers, so we'll see how the Bulls shake this in terms of what decisions the front office wants to make. Now, here's a name in rounding out this list of the three targets to look at come February 2025, Walker Kessler. The main area of need, of course, for this Bulls organization is at the center position, especially with Vooch entering the final season of his contract here. Due to this, Chicago may target Utah Jazz center Walker Kessler to add another key young player to their rotation. I think when you look at a guy like Kessler, he would give the Bulls a great inside scoring option. He's a defender and a rebounder who would be able to work as Vucevic's replacement in the future if he leaves next summer. I widely expect Vooch to either leave to another team or hang it up. He already hung it up for Montenegro in international play, so we'll see. I don't quite think he's done in the NBA yet. I do think he's chasing that championship and wants to be in an organization that is really chasing an NBA championship to round out his career. While the Bulls could target these three players overall, they could also look elsewhere to upgrade their rosters. They try to get into the postseason and end their playoff drought this upcoming season. I think in a weaker Eastern Conference, I think there is a decent shot that the Bulls could, of course, obviously hit that mark that I was talking about yesterday and win about 40 games and go well over that 32.5 win total. But those are just some targets to get the wheels spinning on, and some guys you could look to add and bolster this roster. Now, I know there's that philosophy I talked about in yesterday's show. The Bulls should be looking to trade guys away and rebuild and stockpile future assets, but you can't really rule out the fact that this Bulls front office is, if they have a decent shot to make some noise in the East, they're probably going to look to add some pieces that come at a minimal cost. I think Kevin Huerter being shifted out of town is realistic as well. So we'll see what happens. I just wanted to kind of get your guys' ideas on that. What do you think the Bulls should target entering this upcoming season? What pieces do you think they will likely be looking to add as we hit the trade deadline for this upcoming year? What trade pieces and chips do you think are still on this roster currently? I'd be interested to hear your guys' take on all this. Talking about a Bulls legend here, and I wanted to throw this at you guys today in today's show because he is such a Bulls legend, probably before my time, and a lot of your guys who were around it during this era really appreciated him as a Chicago Bull, and that's Norm Van Lier. He is going to join the Bulls Ring of Honor. The former St. Francis men's basketball standout Norm Van Lier will join the Bulls Ring of Honor in November. Van Lier, who played in Pittsburgh at Midland High School before he came to St. Francis, enjoyed a 10-year career in the association, including 7 seasons with the Bulls. This guy was a staple in Bulls fixtures for a long time. Van Lier is part of a 6-person class that represents the best of the Bulls on the court, from the bench to the front office, and also the broadcast booth. The Bulls Hall of Fame honor, it was started in 2024-25 with a 14-person class that obviously included Michael Jordan there. The Bulls will celebrate the class of 25 with several events in November, including recognition during the Bulls game against the Washington Wizards on November 22nd. So that'll certainly be exciting for him and some of those other Bulls players during that era to celebrate a guy like Norm Van Lier. I think he is going to be well deserving of this night. He's a special player, was a very big piece of this organization for a long time. There will also be a private gala held on November 20th, so kind of an interesting and fun touch to that in those events there. So I wanted to keep you guys posted on a Bulls legend, what's going on with him there. Exciting. He's going to be put into the Ring of Honor coming up this season. Kind of wrapping up today's show, I wanted to talk about, and it comes as no surprise, but ESPN threw out a list of teams with the most future first-round picks. And it comes as no surprise, the team at the top of this list, Sam Presti, doing what he does. Oklahoma City owns 13 first-round picks and 16 second-round picks. Just looking at the entire landscape of this organization, coming off an NBA championship, OKC is loaded in the ability to make some moves with these draft picks moving forward. It does not surprise me at all that they're at the top of this list, looking to continue to dominate the NBA landscape. Coming in second at this list in the top 5, the Brooklyn Nets. They have 13 future firsts and 19 future seconds. They loaded up in this past draft just a couple months ago. I don't know if they necessarily got what they were looking for in terms of the pieces and capitalizing on this last year's draft, but they certainly have the assets coming up in future years here to do the same and to continue to kind of stockpile that organization with young talent. Coming in third on that list, the Utah Jazz comes as no surprise. They've been a big struggle in recent years, so they have 11 first and 7 second-round picks here. And then the one that really stood out to me, the Houston Rockets, coming in at 4 on this list, obviously landing perennial superstar and future Hall of Famer Kevin Durant in that deal involving Jalen Green. I think the Houston Rockets have a legitimate shot to win it all this year. Not only that, but they have 9 first-round picks, future first-round picks. Looking at the landscape of their draft capital, this team's going to be a fixture in the Western Conference really for years to come. And I think Kevin Durant's going to end his career in Houston. I think that's his hope. I think it sets himself up very well to do so with so much ability to add young talent around him. This team's going to be a lot of fun to watch and one that I'm circling not only this year but for years to come. So Houston Rockets, I think that they are going to eventually be your Western Conference champion here in 2025-26. Rounding out this list, the Memphis Grizzlies, they have 9 first-round future picks here. Now, this is an organization that is very interesting when you look at them. They're kind of in the same category, I would say, as the Chicago Bulls. However, they do have some more blue-chip talent right now in terms of Ja Morant still being there, and then Jaren Jackson was just locked up on that monster max extension. But things could quickly go south if you're the Memphis Grizzlies in a loaded Western Conference. That's where I find it interesting on what they're truly going to do, where their heads are at in terms of a front office, because this team could either compete and try and push their way through a loaded Western Conference. They could also fall off pretty quickly. Things could become, disgruntled there with a guy who's had some history of being a disgruntled member of a locker room in Ja Morant to begin with. An ultra talented roster, but a very young team still. They have 9 first in the future here, so kind of loading up on those draft picks. They're kind of maybe gearing up for some turbulence moving forward. So overall, I thought that was an interesting thing to kind of round out today's show with. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, and we will see you guys next time.